Okay. Hello, guys. Welcome to Bears Bowley Go Disco Decks Lower Decks in review.
Good Lord, you've got that right for the first time ever.
Yeah. I'm
Like,
awake. Coffee, man.
yeah. Because obviously last week, we because of some technical difficulties, we had to do two takes. So it appeared that James got it right first time, but he actually didn't. He stumbled as much as he usually does.
I'm not entirely convinced I
Um,
got it right the second time.
I think you got it better,
Uh,
but that was flawless.
and yeah, we
Uh,
are.
I'm
We.
not entirely convinced that this is actually James now. That
I'm
this
a.
isn't some sort of
I'm a
shapeshifter who's.
transporter clone.
Mm, indeed.
I'm Jerry.
You are.
Well,
Jerry Burrell.
we're reviewing episode
7.
7, where pleasant
Yep.
fountains lie.
Mm.
But first,
Yes.
I had a couple of just general Star Trek thoughts I wanted to get out.
Go for it. Go for it. I think we're more than happy to discuss Star
I'm
Trek.
going dark again, like I did last week, even though I was fine a minute ago. So I'm just going to put the light on.
Okay. Let's play some lift music, shall we? Do 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 do
Now
do 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 do
there
do
is the
do
sun
do do
in
do
my.
do do do. James just rudely interrupted our lift music there. I'm sorry, viewers. Um,
Okay, yes.
General Star Trek thoughts.
General Star Trek thoughts.
Mm.
So yeah, we. And now I'm getting up as completely. I
Yeah.
got the intro right, but now I'm.
Yeah. No, you've come to a blank.
Yeah,
Do
that
you
was what I
know
was
what
going
it
to
was?
say. So
Go on.
a friend is going to be running a game of Star Trek Adventures soon, and has asked me to play in it.
Mm.
And I decided to play an engineer.
Mm.
And you know that done the rounds for years now. That old Tumblr thread about how humans in Star Trek are just like to alien species, just all Doc Browns. Like they watch Back to the Future like it's a documentary. Like Vulcans are like like Klingons asking Vulcans like, well, why'd you let them run the Federation? Well, you see, we gave them two warp cores to experiment on, and you know how most people would like keep one for when the other one goes wrong. They just strapped
Mm.
them both together and blew up a sun. So we just let them like the idea that like the reason that other species ships do not go wrong like Federation ships do. You know all the weird
Mm.
like science things that go wrong with Starfleet vessels as we watch Star
Yeah.
Trek. But that just doesn't
Yeah.
happen to anyone else. It's only happening to Starfleet because they're insane. Like they're just a bunch of crazy engineers who just do things to see if it works. And
Yeah.
that the reason that Scotty is the chief engineer, like it's a human that's the chief engineer in a lot of these Starfleet vessels,
Mm.
isn't because there isn't like species that may actually be better at it. Is that anyone else looks at Starfleet engine rooms and runs away screaming?
Mm. Yeah, it's very much man in a shed engineering, isn't
Yeah,
it? Which, like, admittedly, is where the majority of like ingenuity comes from. It's where like that inspirational moment happens.
yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you get the greatest thing, but you'll get at least the first iteration of the greatest thing
So
coming
yeah,
from a shed.
I want to play that
Um,
utterly embodied into a chief engineer who I'm kind of describing as what if Scotty was on coke most of the time?
well, I mean, TNG addresses that as well because
Yeah,
like Geordie is constantly pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and hacking and hacking and hacking. And there's the few episodes where there's actually the lead designer of the warp engine that's used in
yeah,
Galaxy class ships. And initially, she's a holographic representation that he creates in the holodeck to help him solve
yeah.
an issue.
Problems.
And later on, obviously, he meets the real person. And of course, there's a romantic issue because he's fallen in love with the holodeck version of her. And so, and she's disgusted at what he's done to her engines.
Yeah.
Because obviously she's a essentially theoretical engineer, so she does all the maths, and not necessarily any of the actual practical work. And he has to convince her that what he's done is correct, and that's why he's managing X, Y, Z, and what have you.
Yeah, like I want in the stats in the game, it looks like engineers would be better. There's a stat like I think it effectively translates to like being cool under pressure would be the better stat for engineers. But I've put everything into daring because I just want to be that engineer who's like, oh yeah, I can get us to go faster, Captain. We might blow up 5 minutes later, but I can get us to go faster.
Yeah, I remember. Obviously, it's a long time ago, but one of the very, very few like actual PC games I ever had was Starfleet Academy.
Yes.
And my word, I enjoyed that game. Like
Just GOG, Good Old Gaming. They've just put up a ton of old Star Trek PC games up on there. They're a game store that is dedicated to older stuff for the most part, and like maintaining older stuff being able to run on newer machines, so that we don't lose like decades of PC gaming in the same way that happens with consoles. And they just put up a shed ton of Star Trek games like Starfleet Academy, Star Trek Bridge Commander, Elite Force, which was for Star Trek first-person shooter.
Like one of the things I enjoyed about Starfleet Academy was the fact that like you had to prioritize energy and stuff like that. So it was like you did have to do a little bit of like almost thinking like the engineer would, or what have you. And yeah, it's one of the very, very few PC games that I've ever had it was that sweet spot where I had a powerful enough PC to actually run a PC game, and I decided to actually try and play it. And I don't know how I got the game. It was a legal copy. I have a feeling Adrian got it for me.
PC games used to just show up in places back in the day in big giant boxes that were way too big for because they come with Amaray CD cases inside of them, or if it was an old enough game, floppy disks. But I just love the size of boxes PC games used to come in. Like you go into a game store and
they were ridiculous, weren't they?
Yeah.
And and of course PC games for the longest time as well just stayed on CDs as well, because because obviously you just install them, so it was very much a case of CDs are still cheaper than DVD, so we're going to give you 35 CDs for you to install rather than giving you one DVD.
They moved to DVD quite.
No, I mean they did eventually.
I would say they were on DVD during the PS2 era, certainly.
Some of them were. Not all of them.
No, but you've got to bear in mind, you could go out and buy. It's not like it wasn't like.
But then DVD drives were still relatively new in the PS2 era.
It's also all consoles, PS2, right? Where obviously when the PS2 era was fully kicking, you could walk into. You wouldn't be walking into a shop that sells games and necessarily buying PS1 games anymore. While PC games, certainly new releases on DVD, but you can still probably go and buy a 5-6-year-old release that was still on CD.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Because it wasn't like there was generational consoles to.
No, I suppose not. But anyway, so I think that leads us back round quite nicely, unless you've got another.
It does,
point
but there was a second Star Trek point that I wanted to discuss as well. Or should I discuss this one at the end?
Is it related to engineering? Because this episode
not, so we can bookend.
It's all about engineering.
It is, so we can bookend this episode with Burrell's Star Trek points 1 and point 2.
Indeed. So, yeah, this episode, I'm going to steal some of your presenting job here, James.
No worries. I don't like presenting, so that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, neither of us do. We're but. Yeah, this one focuses predominantly on the chief engineer, who obviously is a recurring character, but we've never really looked into them as anywhere near as much detail as some of the other bridge crew.
He's from a planet that, of course, makes utter perfect sense, because, of course, a bunch of Renfair nerds
Yeah,
would go and
colonize a planet.
a
They
planet that
found a
had
planet.
dragons.
Found a planet populated by dragons. So this is like this was really quite meta, like in a way, because this was that like virgin nerd joke that you'd get of like, oh, you're a Star Trek fan back in the day, but taken to its absolute extreme and somehow actually not insulting. Like it was actually celebrating the fact that like these absolutely passionate, beautiful nerds exist, and they'd gone and found they'd taken their nerdery to the absolute extreme limit
I
and
mean,
started an
I
entire
I
society.
love Ren Fair nerds. There is
Hmm.
a Venn diagram
I
that
mean, I
looks
wouldn't
very
even.
similar to a circle between Ren Fair nerds and D&D nerds, right? Because
I'd
what
say
is
it's
Ren
D and
Fair
D
other than
nerd.
LARPing?
It is. It's just LARPing, and there's like, and obviously D and yeah, as you say, D&D
It's weird.
nerds,
Like
and like,
Ren Fair is one thing from American culture that I wouldn't mind. Is one thing that I would like to experience because it's not UK. Like you don't get Ren Fairs in the UK because
well, why would you?
we live in a perpetually medieval.
And it's even more so now,
Yeah.
because we're heading as far back as we possibly can, thanks to Brexit.
Well,
Hashtag politics.
far forward to British Mad Max, one or the other.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I
The
mean,
Fuel Wars.
I don't. I mean, the thing is, we're probably not going to go as far back as medieval times. There's definitely a part of the British population that really lusts for that good old World War II spirit. So
I would say
dig for victory and
it's a
still that.
mixture of. I think we could go far back as like Edwardian, Victorian. Like
Mm.
I feel
I
like we've
mean,
got it's Edwardian onwards. I feel that's what we've got. Like
mm, especially if we ever get Prime Minister Rees-Mogg.
oof.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
What
it's
every
like
like the episode of like every kind of British top hat wielding villain to ever walk the earth somehow encompassed in one man.
I mean, we are heading towards what would be the mirror universe Britain in Star
Oof.
Trek at the
Yeah.
moment. Like we are certainly at that point where it's so weird. Like I remember when uh what's that bloody film with knife time, not bullet time, with the main character in a mask.
Oh,
Uh,
Viva Vendetta.
yeah, V for Vendetta. I remember
You
when
know,
V for Vendetta came
also a
out.
film, but famous graphic novel by Alan Moore. Well,
Yeah, I
comic.
know. Like, but the graphic novel made sense because like that was Alan Moore saying like if Thatcher gets her way, we're going to end up in a dictatorship. Whereas the film changed the time period, and
I
so it
think the
was
film is
like,
actually a relatively solid adaptation, though, to a certain
yeah,
extent.
but it was because but they changed the time period, so it was like implying that Gordon Brown would become a dictator, um, and of course that just seemed laughable, and yet now somehow, like the Tories have managed to push us to that point where actually maybe like that film wasn't so laughable after all, sadly.
Also,
So yeah, we've
maybe you're nostalgic for the idea of a Gordon Brown dictatorship.
I would love a Gordon Brown dictatorship right now. I'd
Uh,
love an Ed Miliband dictatorship where it was like mandated that everyone wasn't able to eat a bacon sandwich properly.
One
Like,
day, I'm still going to get my dream shirt of I voted for chaos with Ed.
yeah, so
Because that's the
like,
thing, right? All the Tory talk of, and I know
mm.
we're getting into British politics here, and it's not what Star Trek is. This is a Star Trek show, and we're not talking about Star Trek, but
But Star Trek is politics.
yes, for all the
Like,
talk
yeah, mm.
of like how
Chaos.
like oh yeah if you vote for them if you vote for the there'll be nothing but chaos, and when we look around ourselves right now, it's like what this is what non chaos looks like.
Yeah, I mean, for those who aren't necessarily aware of what's going on in the UK, we are doing our very, very best to cosplay as Venezuela at the moment. So it's yeah.
Hey, maybe it'll finally put true tide to the American argument that what do you want socialism like Britain and Venezuela?
Yeah, not that we're really a socialist state, especially under that blue banner.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, back around to Star Trek. Now that we've
Yes.
talked about the mirror universe that we're slowly colliding
I
with,
love the Ren Fair Nerd Society,
the Ren Fair Nerd Society.
the
So
Ren Fair
we've
Nerd
got
Planet, and
yeah,
I like that the chief engineer is not a Ren Fair nerd; he's a Starfleet nerd.
yeah, and like that because these are humans, but they're one of those wonderful planets that are like in Star Trek canon, where it's a colony of humans that have become different to
Yes.
a completely different culture.
I
So they're
also,
still biologically human, but
yeah,
they're not human, if you know what I mean.
I also
And
absolutely love the implication that this happens like once a year,
mm,
because like when she shows up and you see like the captain's like, oh god, like
yes, because of course we haven't alluded to it properly, but the chief engineer is
is the
the
prince
heir to
of this.
it's
Yeah.
the heir to the throne of this planet, and he um, is a perpetual virgin because as soon as he has sex, then he inherits the
You
throne.
know why you're saying the
Um,
joke doesn't feel at any point degrading or insulting?
mm,
It's because there isn't any like that's not what's played for laughs.
mm,
As in, you see like the whole crew cheer on and support his
his virginity.
yeah,
Yeah,
like it's it
because it's his decision. It's not about peer pressure, and I suppose that's the thing that like this is really a peer pressure episode. Like
yeah.
this is like that. Yeah, sex is great, and if you find someone that like it's going to be a good experience for you both, then why the hell not? But like if it isn't for you or it isn't for you yet, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And that's really what this episode is. Like you do get the feeling that potentially at some point when he is ready, that maybe that he will take the throne. He will find someone that he wants to sleep with.
And if not, that's a
Um,
valid choice and fine too.
it
Like
is completely, yeah. That and he because obviously that like it's actually a really really sex obsessed culture as well.
yeah.
Like they have guards that are trained from childhood to be sex pests essentially, so that they can try and seduce the prince. And it's a really backward kind of society in a
But
way.
it also reminds me of the cheering like of a
Ooh.
crew and the support of a crew for him. Reminds me of an
Mm,
evolution of a joke in season one where Rutherford is wanting to shift from department to department to find out what he wants,
mm,
and they like, and it plays up each time like his commanding officer is going to be like, "You want to leave?" But then it's like,
mm,
"Good for you! Find out what you want." And then the
mm,
whole crew is like cheering his exploration
mm,
of different decks that Starfleet is supportive of
mm.
choice, of personal choice, and of learning and improving yourself. Right?
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it's like it's a reflection on the wider idea of the Federation,
Yes.
because in theory, if you're within the Federation, especially on some of the wealthier planets, essentially like Earth, then because they live in such a socialist utopia, you can be whatever you want to be. Like, if you want to be an artist and you can't draw for shite, then like that doesn't matter. If that's what brings you joy, if that's what like fulfills your life, then that's fine. Because obviously they have a gluttony of resources. They have replicators. They have this. They have that. So it only makes sense that even within Starfleet, which is like a semi-military based entity, that you want the people to be in the best position that they can be in.
Yes.
And if because which is actually
Which
kind of
harkening
again, it's it's a
Harkening
commentary.
back to what we were talking about at the start, which is maybe why you get crazy engineers, right? Because people do what they have a passion for.
Mm. But I mean, it's also like it's another Star Trek social commentary on employment now. That a obviously in a traditional, say, American company, it's all about like kind of stifle the employees and like work them and work them and work them and work them and
Well,
work them. Whereas the opposite end of the spectrum is if you pay them well, if they're happy, if they're healthy, then you have a productive.
or
Um,
to
mm,
get real world political for a second again,
mm.
it's
God damn you, James! Stay in your lane.
it's the dream of universal basic income, right?
Yeah,
The idea that if everyone has a basic income that is enough
to
to
live,
live and not survive, to live,
actually live. Yeah.
then people can go and then money you earn from jobs is just
Mm.
the icing on the cake, right? You've
Yeah.
got the nice cake that you can live off of, but
Mm.
sometimes you want chocolate fudge cake,
Yeah.
but it means that you can do a job that interests you because you're not working to survive.
Yeah.
You have the basics to live, and then anything you do is, and sometimes you might just be like, oh yeah, I want to make some money, so I'll go and work at,
XYZ.
yeah, and it might not be something that you're passionate for, but you're saving for something that's more than a living expense.
Mm.
So you go and do a job for 6 months, and then after those 6 months, you're free to just wander on. Or because you're also getting your basic income, you can do what you want. If you've got a passion you want to fulfill, you can take the time to try it.
Yeah.
And you might succeed or you won't. But again, it would open a world of so much perspective because there are potentially brilliant people out there who can never push or achieve that brilliance because they just don't have the time. Because they have to work to survive in something that doesn't necessarily fulfill them, but they also can't go after fulfilling it. And that's the future of that's presented in Star Trek. The fact that people can just
Have a
people can
crack.
do what they want. So if
Yeah.
a genius engineer exists in a part of society that isn't necessarily wealthy and wouldn't necessarily be able to fulfill those passions, in this future of Starfleet, they can, because so you are getting truly the best of everyone.
Indeed. It's equity, not equality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Raising everyone up.
And that's a note. If anyone hadn't guessed, like, I kind of think universal basic income is a good idea that people maybe should explore more. But
yeah, I mean, like it's certainly an idea. I mean, I think at least in the meantime.
yeah, I don't think it can work in society as it is currently. But
No,
it's
because the thing is, you'd have to pay significantly higher taxes in the first place and stuff like that as well.
As I say, when people say, "But you got to be realistic," it's like, hey, maybe I just believe we should improve society somewhat. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, it's things like minimum wage, like the like we're lucky in this country in that like we have an okay minimum wage. It should be better, like, but it's by no means the worst in the world. Like, you look at say hospitality in particular. Our hospitality earns the same minimum wage that myself and James do in the jobs that we do. I know obviously we're on slightly higher wages because of positions and stuff like that, but like or time served and etc. But like in theory the a restaurant worker gets the same money as what we would do in we work in supermarkets, and whereas obviously in America it's not that, and that's why there's such a tipping culture issue there and what have you. And it's like genuine slave wages, like it's horrendous. And there's
your staff should not be reliant on the kindness of strangers to earn a living. You should be paying your staff.
I mean, the things it's not even like the kindness of strangers. It's like it's societal expectation now. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact is, it's frowned upon to not tip, even if you have the worst restaurant experience in your
But
life.
it's in a
Like,
society where it should be frowned upon not to tip. As
like,
in, as that society currently functions,
mm,
tipping is crucial.
and it's like, well, what do you like, if you genuinely have an absolutely appalling server, like in a restaurant, you're still supposed to tip them because culture says you're supposed to tip them.
But
Like,
I agree that you should in that
mm,
society because
mm,
that worker still needs to, despite
they do, but at the
performance, needs
same
to
time,
survive because everyone has a bad day, right? And you
everyone does
shouldn't be
have a bad
paid
day,
less
but
because you're having a bad
mm,
day. So
but
if it's down
but
to for customers to pay you as opposed to your
oh
employers,
yeah,
which it shouldn't be in the first place,
no,
but if that's the society you've built and set up, then yes,
mm,
tipping is crucial and you should tip, regardless of quality of service, because that's the
mm.
society you've decided to live it. Like you've
I
decided to
suppose the
build.
I suppose the issue is obviously if it's like you don't know potentially as a customer whether it's a one-off or whether it's a daily occurrence. Like if you were like, because obviously if you're a regular in that restaurant and you know that server and you know it's just a bad day, fair enough. Like,
Yeah, but it doesn't.
but
None of that matters
mm,
when you've built a society that relies on
oh yeah,
tips for
yeah. I
people to
mean,
survive. It's
it's mm,
employees should pay better,
yeah,
and
employers.
tipping then should be the bonus it is designed and meant
Mm,
to be. Yes, so employers,
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah,
effectively,
exactly.
employers should pay what it requires their staff to live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like Walmart. I saw a tweet the other week that included in the paperwork when you sign your Walmart contract is the paperwork that you need to apply for food stamps. Like it's actually in your welcome pack
Yeah,
because they know they aren't going to pay you enough for you to survive.
and it's the idea that
Like,
like you see these signs that have been up in various places, like people just don't want to work anymore. It's like they've just had enough. That like maybe
mm.
maybe you reached the breaking point there, but
Well, I mean, it's like I mean, even in this country, where, as I say, I mean, like they are paid. I've worked in restaurants, and like restaurant employees are paid better than they are in the States, but it's still an incredibly hard job.
yeah,
Like the hours that you pull, and the ungrateful customers, and sometimes bosses that you have as well. Like it's a very very difficult job to be in. And being a waiter or a waitress, or server as it's more commonly referred to, um, is like it's a very skilled job to do it very well, and earn the tips, to earn good tips in this country as well, because we're not a tipping culture, not really. Um, like you have to be incredible at your job, like really really good. So like realistically in this country, I'd say it's a £20 an hour kind of job, if you're good at what you do. Like um and yeah, I mean, I think that's, going back to Star Trek, going back to this episode, like it's, as you said, James, it's that thing of like showing that people can potentially do
well,
what they want to do. I
it's
loved working in restaurants. If I felt that I could have a decent work life balance, I possibly still would work in a restaurant.
well, it's like it's what they
um
say, right? It's the that notion of like, oh well, it is what it is. This is what the world's like. What can you do about it? And
mm,
it's like that's not very aspirational. Like
mm,
if you look at Star Trek and you have and Star Trek isn't always the utopia. At least Starfleet and the Federation isn't necessarily the utopia it always presents itself as,
mm.
but it is a much more utopian society than we currently
I think
reside
it's
in.
a realistic um approximation of
But
what we could reach.
yeah, and but that's the thing.
I think that's
You
the thing.
only could if you
Mm,
decide that if as long as you kind of walk around the thought process of like, well, this is just how everything works, and well,
mm,
like what can you do about it? It is what it is. Like, or maybe
mm.
it could be better. Like maybe we
Yeah,
could.
I mean, it's down to quite a lot of different attitudes. It's like, even the attitude that you have as an individual approaching any job that you have. Like, if you think that your job is terrible, chances are
Well,
everyone else that you work with
it's
thinks that your job is terrible
it's
as
like
well.
here in the
Uh,
UK, right? We
so
take
have some fun with them,
we take the National Health Service
for granted.
for granted, but
I mean, it's to the point now that far too many people even criticise it.
it wasn't
Like,
something that always existed, and it
no,
took some people looking at society as it was and going, "We can do better.
mm,
We can do better here."
yeah,
Because I was watching a short clip from the New Statesman the other day where Vic Mayo plays Tory
yeah,
MP Alan Bastard,
mm.
and it's his
Bastard.
yeah,
Mm.
and it's his clip on like the NHS, how the
Yeah,
easiest way to get rid of waiting times is just
close the NHS.
yeah, and it's
Yeah,
like and return to the ways it used to be. If poor people got sick, they died, and you know what?
mm.
That also has a benefit of reducing poverty. Don't
Yeah.
say we're heartless. And it's
Yeah.
like, the thing is, I was watching, it's like, oh god, that is the actual current,
That's the actual current Tory party. Yeah,
yeah, that's the current policy, isn't it? That is their current,
I mean, they were always that party of like relative austerity, and all of them were probably a little bit racist. And then you had a few backbenchers that were just a bit like, a bit like, whoa, like, but who occasionally would be an Alan Bastard who managed to get a microphone and would say something like that. Whereas now,
now everyone's running the show.
now it's more of a case of try and find the one that isn't like that. Like, it's, yeah, shocking, absolutely shocking. What was the B plot this week?
The B plot, I'm glad you say, has the amazing
Was-
Jeffrey Combs guesting in it.
Yeah,
And it is,
one of the most prolific actors in Star Trek history.
Yep.
He's, I think he's only just behind Frakes, actually, for appearing in things.
Star Trek
And obviously,
aside, if you like his performance in this, watch the Reanimator series. He's great in it.
oh, he's such a good actor.
Yeah.
But he, he's appeared in TNG, DS9, Voyager, and oh god, where Enterprise.
Yeah,
And
and
now this.
he plays an evil AI.
Mm.
The kind that decides to rule a society. As you know, tends to happen in Star Trek from time to time.
Yeah, it's another Star Trek trope. Again, dealt with wonderful humor, quite a lot of depth considering the runtime of the episode.
So yeah, you have this is Boimler Mariner's story, and Boimler's meant to be going on a space slug shooting mission with Ransom.
Space Squid.
Oh,
Wasn't it?
I thought space slug.
Space Octopus. Space Octopus. It was.
Oh,
Because they mentioned tentacles.
yeah, and he's polishing up a phaser rifle, and there's this wonderful joke where man was like, "So what does that do that a normal phaser doesn't do?"
Mm.
I love the logic because logically, like, why would a phaser rifle be any better than a? But
I think it's just the ergonomics of it.
yeah,
It makes it more.
it's military aesthetic, isn't it? It allows it to look more cool.
I mean, there is that, but I mean, obviously, in theory, like if you were holding the handheld phaser rifle, like even if in theory it was as powerful, I mean, the handheld like phaser pistol, even if it was in theory as powerful as the rifle, like your accuracy over distance would be less because you're still a human. You've still got So the ergonomics of a rifle work for distance.
But the rifle, and then he ends up getting reassigned, and they go on a mission to ship a evil AI that the ship captured recently to the Daystrom Institute.
Which, of course, has been referred to a lot more recently in Star Trek because of things like Picard and
AI is the current in thing in in Star
which
Trek.
does make me think that because they did say that potentially they are looking at a universal big bad, for all the Starfleet TV series. I mean, Star Trek TV series at the moment.
Well,
Like
there's the
potentially
implication that far, far in distant space is an AI that even scares the Borg, right? That's the
yeah,
implication of it all.
yeah. And so, like, it feels like maybe the Cerritos might be involved in this in some manner. Like, I mean, obviously, it'll be interesting to see how they do that. Like,
maybe you do a time travel episode where the crews of the different ships all have to team up.
I mean, I'm more thinking that, like, how do you get the Cerritos, which is a cartoon entity, into the live action and vice versa? Like, it's easy enough to get the other characters into the cartoon.
Or you have it that much of a theme of Lower Decks, right? Why the big crossover event is happening,
Yeah.
the Cerritos is dealing with stuff. Much like how we see why the bridge on Lower Decks, why the bridge crew are dealing with traditional Star Trekky stuff. The Lower Decks team are like, you do that kind of thing where. But that aside, it was a great plot. Matt, they crash on another planet, and the AI tries to turn Mariner and Boimler against each other.
Yeah,
and
it
Mariner
seems to be like the Bermuda Triangle of space kind of thing.
Yeah, and Mariner just doesn't have enough faith in Boimler, right? And this Boimler gets a really good moment to shine.
Yeah,
this episode.
This is Boimler trying to prove that he's a bit more. I don't want to use the term manly, but manly. That he's he's
I
not
wouldn't use the term manly. This is Boimler trying to prove he's more competent in general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing is
he's more capable. He's learned.
Capable, yeah, not competent, yeah, because he's like obviously
because he's trying to prove he has the same set of skills as Mariner. I mean, we wouldn't necessarily describe Mariner as manly, like.
I suppose in an old school term you would, but like I mean, obviously a very outdated term now. Like she's the tomboy and what have you.
I don't even necessarily think she is a tomboy. She's just capable.
Yeah, she's just capable.
Yeah.
Like, I think the thing, like, she knows how to kick some ass. Like, and Boimler in this episode is trying to prove that he can kick some ass as well.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that, like intellectually, he's as good as they get. Like, he is definitely on the right path to getting a command position at some point. And yeah, this is his episode to shine as someone who can kick a little bit of ass, be nice and tough, and
but yeah,
in this case, outsmart a super AI.
It's revealed that Mariner sabotaged Boimler. And what's interesting here is we all know Mariner has a habit of self,
separate, yeah.
Well, no, of what's the word I'm looking for? She has self-destructive qualities. She
almost self-sabotage.
Yeah, self-sabotage, and I think we're seeing her extend that self-sabotage onto Boimler, like because she doesn't want to go anywhere. And because she doesn't want to go anywhere, so she keeps sabotaging herself to stay as an ensign. She's effectively beginning to sabotage Boimler to keep him at her level.
The implication is that she's also seen so much, including some quite dark stuff, that obviously for her, like, she might not want to advance any further anymore because she's seen the bad bits.
But she shouldn't be making that call for Boimler.
No, she shouldn't be. But in her own mind, she's probably like protecting Boimler.
Oh, like, I'm 100%. That's how she's justifying it.
Yeah.
But it does feel like she's projecting her desire for self-sabotage onto
Boimler.
Yeah, like 100%. She would be justifying it in the manner of I'm keeping him safe. But that I don't think is what's happening. And that's the thing. This show has wonderful characters that allow discussion on this level. They're not just 2D jokes.
No, they're not just 2D jokes. I think, like, we say this every episode, but I do genuinely think this is one of the finest pieces of Star Trek that there's ever been. Like, I think this is Star Trek at its absolute best.
And the thing is, Boimler pulls it off as well, right? He proves he is capable because he tricks the
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. and very nicely, very subtly. And then obviously at the end we see some top men at the Daystrom
Yeah.
Institute put the Ark of the Covenant into a pile of boxes.
And there's just hundreds of them.
Yeah, and they start arguing with each other.
Yeah.
So
It's a good episode.
It's a cracking episode.
Only 3 more to go.
Yeah, I wonder what they'll do.
Don't
Because
know.
obviously they.
Well, we're building up to the Packlers attacking Earth, aren't we? I think that's going to be our final.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that feels like it'll be a cliffhanger.
I reckon we'll see the Titan again.
I wonder if the Packleds will actually attack Earth, or they'll get it wrong. Like it'll just be another M-class planet.
Yeah, that
like,
they just can't tell the difference in.
Yeah, they're just like in a neighbouring star system.
So now
like,
we
potentially go on.
Now now we've had the discussion of the episode. We're going to move on to Bull's Star Trek Point 2.
Yes.
They've recently remastered the first 4 movies.
Sorry?
They've recently remastered the first 4 movies.
Oh, have they?
Into 4K.
I'm going to continue with my breakfast.
Yeah, so now the motion picture, Raffican was done a while ago, actually. At least it was released on Blu-ray as a remaster, and the iTunes version has been the 4K master for a while. But they've added motion picture, Search for Spark, Raffican. So, motion picture, Raffican, Search for Spark, Voyage Home. All have had a 4K master, all have been released on 4K now, and all are on 4K available on iTunes. And oh man, was it the HD remaster added a fair heavy tint over those films, to the point where looking at some of the comparison clips, it's like there's moments where it's like I'm not sure which one I preferred, but then when you go back and look at the original film or the DVDs, it's clear that
the DVD remasters were absolutely beautiful for the time as well. And they did a real good job with the sound remastering for that. So
it's clear the HD remasters did some stuff. I'm not saying that the HD remasters were very good, but when you go back and look at a lot of it taken off, like they were cooler films in colour temperature than the HD versions show. I'm very tempted to get them, even though I own every Star Trek film on Blu-ray.
Likewise. Every TOS and TNG film, anyway.
Fair. I own the 2 Kelvin films as well.
Yes, because one of them doesn't exist.
Yeah. I'm tempted to say I'd probably own the 2 Kelvin.
The first Kelvin.
I own Star Trek and Star Trek Beyond twice. I think I've got them both on disc, and I've got them both on iTunes. I like both of those films. I think Beyond is great. Beyond actually also works as a relatively fun sequel to Enterprise.
Does it?
Yeah, it's about an NX ship, isn't it?
Idris
Elba plays a captain of an NX ship that got lost.
Sorry, what? Who?
Idris Elba plays a captain of an NX.
There we go.
An NX ship that got lost.
Okay, Jarmes.
And
yes, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah,
I'd completely forgotten. So
the thing is, the whole lot of the Kelvin universe really plays with a lot of Enterprise stuff, because obviously there's various references to Archer and his Beagle in the first film as well. Like, because I guess canonically Enterprise still happens pretty much as it did.
Yeah, just about. Because there's some odd little timey-wimey shifts in the Kelvin universe that because like Kirk's a different age than he is in.
Well, I think an argument can be made that maybe Spock and Nero didn't actually travel back in time. Maybe if he just punched in to another alternative universe, like the Mirror Universe, and
possible. Yeah,
it's just a universe that's much closer to the Prime Universe than the Mirror Universe is, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe it isn't actually time travel. They just.
I mean, time travel and space like dimensional travel. 'Cause
Yeah,
they'd still be traveling back in time,
because
but
like
not.
Voyage Home,
But
they did
not.
not travel back to.
Hmm.
Uh, they traveled back in time. Oh, weird timey wimey. For
Hmm.
that isn't remotely accurately canon, but
Hmm.
Voyage Home caused the Kelvin universe to form. Like whatever them just being back in the past there changed things enough that
Hmm.
it caused the
Maybe
Kelvin universe to branch off.
that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Hmm.
Because they did effectively change things, right? Like that's the
Well, I mean, they essentially contributed to the extinction of humpback whales
and also
in the
gave
first one.
tech early.
They did give tech early, which would potentially explain some of the shinier pieces of tech in the Kelvin universe.
Yeah,
Mm.
but that's just
Mm.
that's just fan fiction.
It is fan fiction, but it's fan fiction I quite like. And
But
if we do get another Kelvin universe Star Trek film,
I think we are,
I
aren't we?
know
We're getting at least
they
one
did.
more.
I know they did a failed version of Wrath of Khan, but I would not be against, as it would be Simon Pegg writing it. One would assume. I would not be against him having a stab at a Kelvin Universe version of Saving Some Whales.
I don't think I do want that, although it looks like we're getting a super serious version of that in Picard coming up. So
Oh God, yeah, it's going to be awful, isn't it?
I don't know.
Um,
I rewatched the trailer again the other day, and like, there's a lot in that trailer I do like. Even if it's
yeah.
just I like the cast a lot, and I like seeing them interact, and I like Picard as a captain of this little renegade
Mm,
crew of people. Like it, I like season one more than you did.
yeah, I think it was odd. I didn't dislike it.
Although I was watching
It was just very much like, oh right, what?
I was watching an
It's,
essay on Lower Decks before, actually, literally just before we started filming, by
mm,
I think it's Jesse Gender on YouTube.
okay.
Uh, does a lot of Star Trek content, and she was saying that one thing Lower Decks has that other modern Trek shows don't is the downtime. The bits in old Star Trek episodes where you would see them just, playing on the holodeck or
Mm,
hanging out, gambling,
yeah.
like with something.
Mm,
Just having drinks in 10-4.
mm,
Like all that kind of time where you saw the crew just living
just
their
living.
lives before the plot happened.
Yeah.
Like the live action modern Trek shows just don't give you that
No.
because it's disaster to disaster to disaster, right? It's because of there need to be modern television
Yeah, yeah.
and serialized modern television at that. There's no moment of Tilly just like hanging out. Like
Not yet. I do think that Discovery has the
I don't
potential
think we're
now
ever going to see
to
that in Discovery. I do think we might see
maybe.
that in Strange New Worlds because it's meant to be episodic.
Mm. I hope we see the holodeck in Strange New Worlds because there is a proto holodeck in that era of ship.
But we know the Enterprise doesn't have it.
It does because it's in the animated series.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Ah, it might not have it
It's
yet
not a
though because the animated
it's
series
not a
is.
fully it's not a fully interactive holodeck. It's more like you can't necessarily properly like it wouldn't be populated with people or anything.
The
It's more like you go in there and it's an atmosphere as opposed
the animated
to.
series is a lot of time forward from where we are in Strange New Worlds, though.
I think it's only about 7 years.
Yeah, like because
Yeah.
what?
So I mean,
Effectively,
it might
Strange
be
New
after
Worlds is
a
Pike's second 4-year mission.
5 year.
Yes, so 5-year mission.
Hmm.
Cage has happened. That was in the first 5-year mission.
Yeah.
Then the war happened.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a second 5-year mission.
Yeah.
And then Kirk takes the Enterprise.
Yeah. Although this is towards the end of his second 5-year mission.
It's not. The second 5-year mission hadn't started.
I'm sure this is towards the end of it.
No, from what I remember they said in Discovery, it had finished its mission and it was basically posted away from the war to keep it away. And then this, I think, is the second one starting. Disco happens between the 5-year missions.
We'll see anyway.
Which is why it makes sense that, like, obviously we've got Cadet Uhura, but she's a lieutenant by the time of Enterprise happening.
Yeah, because she'd have time to become a specialist.
Yeah, 5-year mission.
Yeah.
Spock as a 5-year mission to basically become first officer. So yeah, it makes, and it allows us to potentially have a 5-year season of
if they want
Strange
to.
New Worlds, if we want to, and out of all shows, if it's episodic, it's the one that potentially most lends itself to being able to go that long.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's Kirk's a captain at this point, right?
No, I think the Enterprise is his... No, it's not his first.
No, you won't get
ship,
the Enterprise as your first.
But he's an outrageously young captain, though, isn't he?
Yeah, and Kirk only does one 5-year mission.
I think he's 34 when he takes over. So he's very young for, like, getting a flagship anyway.
Yeah, because Kirk does one 5-year mission, right?
No, he actually gets 2. But the original series is only 3 years long.
The animated series is year 4.
Yeah.
And in theory...
And then there was a planned Star Trek 2.
Yes.
Which was meant to be his second 5-year mission, which obviously never happened. But he did get a 5-year mission after that. He did
IDW is just wrapping up a 24-issue comic series called Star Trek Year 5, which is meant to be the 5th year, and it has some of the cast from the animated series in as well. And that's meant to be like Year 5 of a mission.
Yeah, they do. As far as I understand, he does get his second 5-year mission, but we never see it.
So by the time of some of that crew stay in that ship for a long time, then.
Because at the end of the second 5-year mission, that's when he gets promoted to admiral, and that's why at the in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, he's only 2 or 3 years into being admiral.
Yeah,
and they've done a massive overhaul of the Enterprise. Yeah,
man, that ship is old.
Yeah, because there was Robert April before Pike, so there's 5 years under Robert April.
Yeah,
plus 10 years under Pike, plus 10 years under Kirk. So it was 25 years old by the time it had the refit for motion picture.
Which is why then you see Excelsior, which is meant to be the next big thing, right? As opposed to the Enterprise, the Constellation classes.
But then, obviously, in theory, when the Enterprise was first commissioned, it would have been state of the art.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so
there's a reason for Constellation classes with the flagships, right? Like
exactly.
And the Excelsior is meant to be the next one. Like if Discovery wasn't built with such outrageous technology, maybe Discovery would have been the next step. But obviously, there's only 2 of them. One of them got destroyed, and the other went to the future. So,
so it had so it did last probably a reasonable amount of time, to be honest. Because the other thing is that
But what I don't get is why build outside of some nostalgia for the ship? Like why build Enterprise A?
It wasn't. It was a refit.
It wasn't. A wasn't a refit.
It was. It was a. It was the.
Oh, was it a rebranded?
It was a. It was a rename of one of the others.
Ah, of course. They didn't just construct.
No.
That's the other thing with the Kelvin universe, right? By the end of Beyond, we're already on Enterprise A.
Yeah. Um, because and they're also slightly larger than the original ship as well. Because when they do the refit, they add extra decks and it's a
Yeah,
bit wider. So the Enterprise A in particular is significantly larger, although the same shape
yeah.
than the original series and even the refit
Though it's also
of the
worth
original.
noting that the Constellation class in Discovery is also potentially technically larger than original
Mm,
series Constellation, just through the nature of, although it's a lovely
mm,
design.
mm.
The design of, like, it being nailed, bringing that
Bringing
ship
that back, yeah.
up to
Mm,
date without going JJ.
yes.
And there's nothing wrong. I think the Enterprise looks great in the Kelvin films, but
Mm,
it looks like turning. It looks like a super exciting film version of the Enterprise, while the Discovery Enterprise looks like a modernized version
mm.
of the original.
Yeah, totally, totally get it. But then it's different approaches, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
one is
obviously,
playing within the canon, isn't it? The other isn't,
mm.
arguably.
Well, I mean, even like with the different shows like we've that are currently within the canon, like I mean, we've discussed how Lower Decks
Yeah.
approaches Star Trek in one way, and Discovery's approaching it a different way, and Picard's approaching it a different way, and like, I mean, when we were discussing Picard earlier, like that I suddenly realized I suppose a metaphor for how I feel about Picard. Like, because it isn't that I dislike Picard. Like, I feel very much about Picard how I feel about Five Guys. Like, that it's enjoyable, but it just is what it is. Like, I mean, for obviously for the viewers who don't understand this reference, like Five Guys for me, I don't think is anything terribly impressive. I don't see why it's three times the price of McDonald's. Like, because I would say at best it's only twice the standard, maybe.
It's
But
because
yeah,
of how few there is
mm,
and its perception within the UK market. No one
mm.
gets excited for McDonald's.
No, I think like
I
I
like
mean
Five Guys. I think
I think given the choice, if I want to spend more money than at McDonald's and there's a Burger King around, I'll go for a Burger King over a Five Guys. Like every day of the
I love
week.
Burger King as
Um,
well, but that's the difference. Like, a Burger King can be as regular as a McDonald's if you live near one.
mm,
A a Five Guys is for, oh, I'm in the Trafford Centre and I want a burger.
mm.
Like,
I
and the
think
thing
for me
is,
as well,
I
it's
don't ever
that.
go for one in Manchester City Centre. I like Five Guys
Mm,
a fair amount, but there's more interesting places I can be eating it in Manchester City Centre.
mm,
In the Trafford Centre food court, there isn't.
yeah, I mean,
Like,
I think for me because I'm allergic to milk and therefore can't have cheese as well.
yeah,
Um, a cheeseburger can quite often hide behind the cheese. Like the so when you are just eating a burger, like
yeah.
you really notice a good burger.
So I,
And for my palate, um, I would say that at least in the UK, because I know it's different in the US, because McDonald's in the US is like just eating salt off the ground. It's that awful. Um, but the difference between a McDonald's patty and a Five Guys patty, at least in the UK, when you don't have cheese on it, when it's just literally the burger that has to shine, um, the it's not that big of a difference.
so
And
for me,
so it's a bit
yeah,
underwhelming for
my
me.
go-to order at Five Guys is a double cheeseburger with bacon and
Mm,
mushrooms.
mm,
In fact, I think that's also it. I can't have mushrooms on a burger at McDonald's, and their bacon
fair
at
enough.
Five Guys is significantly
Mm.
better. If there's any bacon variant at McDonald's, I do not go for it because it is limp, rubbery.
You see, even at home, I'm not a bacon on a burger man.
Crispy,
Like
streaky bacon on
I've
a burger, I think, can be nice.
it can be, but I think like
I'm not a fan of.
um,
First thing, I'm not a fan of what we would generally think of as what would be our go-to bacon, which is
Back bacon.
bacon. Yeah, I think it has to be rashers on, and I think they have to be so crisp that they're nearly
Destroyed.
yeah, because it's not the purpose of bacon on a burger
Is a garnish.
is smoky crunch. It's a textural difference. If it's not that texturally different to the beef, then it's not serving
any point.
No, it serves the same purpose as crispy onions would serve on a burger. It's a bit of crunch.
Yeah.
Mushrooms serve the purpose of a bit of slime.
Yeah. And I think like drawing that back to Picard, like I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with Picard.
No.
But I think that, and obviously we'll see how season 2 goes, but I think
Picard is an odd show.
We've been very, very spoilt with the quality of at least the second half of the season 1 of Disco, season 2 of Disco, and season 3 of Disco in particular. Just something else. And obviously with Lower Decks now. I mean, like, it's ridiculous that we're talking about a cartoon.
But I also think it's that Picard just isn't necessarily
so good.
I think Picard is something maybe you don't want out of Star Trek.
Maybe.
I think you dislike Picard for the same reason I really dislike season 1 of Disco, right?
Yeah, again, I don't dislike it, but I think I'd also like if it weren't for the fact that potentially there is going to be an overarching thing to bring them all together, like a big AI bad at some point. I also wouldn't miss it in the same way that I don't miss Five Guys. I've not had a Five Guys in years.
Yeah, neither have I, to be fair.
And if I don't ever have a Five Guys again, it is not going to change my life. Like,
this thing, as I said earlier, Five Guys is something I would go for if I was in a food court where the option was various fast food choices. Yeah. If I'm somewhere like in Manchester, for example, around the corner from Five Guys is the Arndale Food Market that has Viet Shack.
Yeah,
and presented with those two options, eating the Five Guys or ordering some food from Viet Shack. I'm gonna go to Viet Shack.
And I think that's the thing with Picard for me, that like at the moment we've just started Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
And which is absolute top tier American television. Like it, and it's definitely American television. Like, but it is absolutely top tier. If Picard was available to binge in one go at the same time as Midnight Mass, I would wait until Midnight Mass, until we'd done it all.
Yeah.
And then watch Picard. Whereas if the next season of Disco was available all in one go at the same time as Midnight Mass, I might be tempted to swap and change between them. Or even smash Disco first. And I think that's the thing. Like,
on that note,
yeah.
I am unfortunately going to have to call this to a close.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I've just seen the
we've
time.
Had a damn good chat today.
Yeah, we've hit an hour. Admittedly, I don't think we actually talked about Lower Decks all that much, but we did hit an hour.
No, but Lower Decks took us to these places.
It did.
Like and that's the power of good Star Trek. People.
And on that note, as always, live long and prosper.
Good Lord, James, have you been practicing?
Nah, I can do it as long as I make it before I bring it up, if you get me. Like, I can't really do it, but if I push my hand into the position, I can hold it. But yeah, bye guys.